Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Niobe Way, Professor of Developmental Psychology at New York University and the founder of the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity. Dr. Way is a leading expert on the intersections of culture, context, and human development, focusing particularly on the social and emotional development registers. Her work examines how cultural ideologies shape developmental trajectories, a topic she explores in depth in her book, The Crisis of Connection, Its Roots, Consequences, and Solution. Dr. Way's research, including her book, Deep Secrets, Boys' Friendships and the Crisis of Connection, has earned her recognition as a prominent voice on the complexities of human connection, especially among boys. Her insights into the formation of friendships and the challenges boys face in maintaining meaningful connections are particularly relevant to our conference theme of tribalism and cosmopolitanism. Her newest book, Rebels with a Cause, Reimagining Boys, Ourselves, and Our Culture, for sale in the lobby, extends the insights from boys and young men, as discussed in Deep Secrets, to all of us. Rebels describes what we learn from boys and young men, not only about them, but about us, and what are the cultural roots of their and our problems, and how to solve them. Her talk today, The Cultural Roots of Tribalism, What Boys and Young Men Teach Us, promises to offer a compelling exploration of these issues. Dr. Way is the author of nearly 100 articles and books. Her work has been widely disseminated in academic journals. She's interviewed by popular media outlets almost every week. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Niobe Way.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm super excited to be here. I've been thinking about these topics since 1987, so unfortunately I have too much to say. But I wanted to do a shout out to Gilbert and Philip Rock Lester. Talk is devoted to you. So there you go. You'll be hearing from them tomorrow. Okay, so I want to start from, I have been listening to teenagers since 1987. Young adults, I've been a professor at NYU since 1995. I am going to open up your curiosity. The question was appealing to me because I want to open up your curiosity now. Right, so I think, Phil, we can just make them do it, right? Just be curious. Okay, so I want you to be curious about what boys and young men can teach us about these issues of tribalism and cosmopolitanism, but also teach us about you, okay? And teach us about what's getting in the way of our capacity to act like a full human with both our hearts and our soft sides. Okay. So I started with listening to boys. I've listened to people of all identities my whole career, but the boys are the ones who told a story that I'm going to tell today, and I'm going to teach you something that they have taught me, and I've been writing about for a long time. And I want to start off with what they taught us. They would never use the word tribalism or cosmopolitanism, but what they've taught me a lot about is love. And I'm going to argue in this paper is that tribalism is love of specific people and groups, and cosmopolitan is love of humans. And they've taught me a lot about love, but not the thin version of love, not the thin version of love, that love is all roses and flowers, but actually that love comes from conflict, love comes from disagreement, love comes from difference. So the love that boys have taught me about is the love that's situated in both similarities and differences, not one or the other. And it's situated in loving a human and loving a person. And that's what love is, according to boys and young men. So in order to convince you of this, that's not me saying this, it's the boys and young men who are saying this, I'm going to quote from some quotes from a book that I wrote about 10 years ago. First of all, I know for all of you who are not identified as male or are identified as male in this audience, you're wondering why a woman would be looking at boys and men and telling their story in particular, and I definitely identify as a feminist, because they started to tell a story. In 1987, I was working in public high schools in Boston, and all I heard from boys is about their friendships. That's all they were all talking about, wanting close friendships, wanting to connect to other guys. feeling betrayed by other guys, wanting to repair that. They were talking about their friendships. When I went and took an adolescent development class, who's taken an adolescent development class in this auditorium? Raise your hand, hi. Okay, a couple people have. You rarely learn about friendships, is that true? Like intimate friendships. You learn about peers, but you don't learn about friendships. And you certainly oftentimes don't learn about friendships between guys. And when I was told I was going to do this research, you know the response I got, and I still get that response. It's going to be a short book. Because the idea is that somehow friendships wouldn't be a guy thing. It's a girl thing. So I started to listen to teenagers starting in the mid-1990s and have spent many, many decades following the same kids over time. So these are kids of many identities, and as I said, I'm telling you the stories of boys and young men because they're the ones that tell the story that nobody's listening to. Okay, so I'm going to focus on them, although I'm always inclusive of all identities in my research. So, and why boys of color? Because it's mostly been Black, brown, and Asian American boys from working class communities. And that really comes from, in order to hear the thick story, I'm going to call it a thick story rather than a thin story, you oftentimes have to listen to people on the fringes of power. Because the more they're in the center of power, the thinner their story is. So when you actually listen to young people, especially young people, on the fringes of power, you hear a thicker story about the issues that we care about today. Okay. It was turned into a documentary movie called The Mask You Live In. Has anyone seen this movie? It's a documentary about American masculinity. It was also turned into an Oscar-nominated movie, Close. It was Oscar-nominated last year. So the findings resonated with an entire world, which is pretty cool. But it really is telling a human story that's happening around the world. So now why don't we focus on what the story is? Okay. So let me, I have to walk around in a total pace. Can you hear me if I walk around? Should I carry it? Pull it out. How can you, your hands are shaking, you have to pull something out, okay. Okay, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so let me just describe my studies. So my studies are, we go into public high schools, we've been doing this since '87. Okay, everybody can hear me, right? And we basically ask everybody in the school if they want to be part of the study that we're going to be focusing on. We usually don't use words like social-emotional development. We say we want to know your opinion about a lot of things, about who you are, who you like, what you, I mean, we make it broad. And then all the kids that have parental consent forms, which usually they sign their own parental consent form, I'm sure, they never say that though. So we get like 90% of kids participating in our studies. And then we follow them every year for at least 4 or 5 years. So I'm interested in, as a developmental psychologist, in how, and for all you teenagers in the room, how your narrative changes as you get older, and how that's a reflection of the culture in which you live. So that's my research question. So listening to boys and young men from about 12 to 13, the same kids until they're 18 or 19, okay? So it's the same kids talking over time. Every year, interviewing them, and it's a huge team of NYU students doing the interviews, okay? So our teams are about 25 people doing the interviews. To sum up, and this is a huge body of work with thousands of young people, but I'm gonna sum it up. 4 themes that are relevant to tribalism and cosmopolitanism. The one is that boys are very, very clear, especially EA is early adolescence. At 12, 13, 14, they are very, very super clear that they want an intimate friendship, that that's where their desires are with other guys in particular, that they want that connection, they want that understanding, they want to be able to say things without being laughed at in their vulnerability. They want that, and they say it, and you'll hear them say it. Then they very explicitly link their friendships with their mental health. If I didn't have, you'll hear it. If I didn't have these friendships, I would go wacko, I'd want to kill myself, all these things that are actually happening now. And the boys predict it when they're 12 or 13, that this will cause them problems if they don't have the relationships that they're yearning for, especially with other guys. Then MLA is not the Modern Language Association. That's middle to late adolescence. And that's starting at about 15, 16, 17, you start to hear a different narrative. You start to hear a covering over, it doesn't matter, whatever, I'm fine, it's good, it's all good, my favorite masculine phrase, it's all good. But then ultimately showing a sort of they're struggling to find the friendships that they want, okay? So you're starting to hear what I call the crisis of connection. Between boys in particular, where they're not finding the friends that they're really yearning for, or if they had them, they never had them, or they had them and now they're feeling the distance from them. And you'll hear that again. And then I'm going to talk a lot about today, they also expose the cultural ideologies that get in the way of connection. And I'll talk about what I mean by cultural ideologies. Okay, so now we're going to do a little experiment. Okay, are you ready? I'm going to read a bunch of quotes to show you these themes. I want all those who identify as male, okay, you can be whatever identities you carry with you today, who identify as male, I want you to listen with a cosmopolitan framework. Okay? I want you to listen with a love of humans framework. So all who, Roger, you too, I want you to be thinking about, your, oh boy, I need to, okay, a little sip of water. Getting major dry mouth. Okay. Okay. For all you who are non-gender conforming or female identified, okay, non-gender conforming or female identified, I want you to be thinking tribalism, your tribalism side, your love of your group when you hear the quotes, okay? So, right, you get what I'm doing. I'm doing the opposite. So, tribalism for those who don't identify as male, and cosmopolitan for those who do, okay? So when I listen, you can, sometimes people even shut their eyes, because I want you to really hear the narrative. These are boys speaking, okay? And you have to bear with me while I quote them, because it's obviously not my voice, so it's always a little funny to have the old lady saying the quotes. Okay, so theme number 1. I'm gonna have to read this because I don't have my notes with me. This is a 13, 14-year-old kid. All the names I ever use, by the way, are always pseudonyms. I never use real names. So Nick says here, I asked him about his best friend, and he says, my best friend, he's 14. My best friend and I love each other. That's it. You have this thing that is deep, so deep it's within you. You can't explain it. It's just a thing that you know that that person is that person, and that is all that should be important in our friendship. I guess in life, sometimes have two people you know how two people can really, really understand each other and really have a trust, respect, and love for each other. It just happens. It's human nature. Okay? So anybody want, any of the young people, I'm just going to talk about young people for a second. Any thoughts quickly? Any thoughts in that row? What does it make you think of? What does it make you think of? You were nodding. Go ahead. What does it make you think of to hear that quote? Do you connect to it? You don't connect to it? What? You do connect to it. Okay, okay. You gave the right answer. Thank you very much. Okay. So what's interesting here is that he calls it human nature. 4 years later, he no longer calls it human nature. He calls something else human nature. Okay, but at 14, he calls this human nature the love for another human, in this case, another guy. Okay, I'll go through this quicker, Seth, because we'll never get to our questions. Okay, this is still the first theme, the desire for intimate friendships. And these are all different kids. I've got two best friends, Willie and Brian. Like sometimes when me and Willie argue, me and Brian are real close. Then when me and Brian are not doing so good, me and Willie are real close. It's like circles of love. Sometimes we're all close. My ideal best friend is a close, close friend who I could say anything to, because sometimes you need to spill your heart out to somebody, and if there's nobody there, then you're going to keep it inside. Then you'll have anger. So you need somebody to talk to always. Okay, I have been hearing this for almost 40 years from thousands and thousands and thousands of boys and young men around the world, and we still don't believe that's boy talk. We still think that's somehow girly in terms of what's being expressed. It's stunning to me. We're just not listening at all. Okay, next one. My best friend could just tell me anything, and I would tell him anything, like I always know everything about him. We always chill, like we don't hide secrets from each other. We tell each other our problems. Another kid. If I'm having problems at home, they'll like counsel me. I just trust them with anything, like deep secrets, anything. That's where the title of the book comes in. It's like a bond. We keep secrets. Like if there's something that's important to me, like I could tell him, and he won't go and make fun of it. Like if my family is having problems or something. So it's very explicit about, thinking about problems and secrets. And if any of you have questions about what they mean by secrets, I know the answer. Okay. The final one for this first theme is asked why his friend is important to him. Okay? Yeah, because my best friend is like a second person you could speak to. It's like, see how the kids carry a little teddy bear or whatever, and when they cry and they'll hold it and stuff. So when like you get upset or something, you just walk over to your closest friend and they'll loosen up whatever. They'll be like, yeah, it's all right, even though it's not. Okay, and that's showing what I want to show to all the grown-ups in the room is the remarkable relational and emotional intelligence of all boys and young men, including all humans, is that they understand that the posing that everything's okay, it's all good, when it's really not. And so they're tuning that into, and these are 13 and 14-year-old boys. So they are tuning into an incredibly complicated human world, and they're naming it, right? Okay, then the same kids, right? You gotta imagine it's the same teenagers over time. Oops, I got one more. Okay. I mean, I can like joke around with my friends who are not close, and like if I'm like having trouble in my classes, like if somebody knows a subject better than me, like I'll ask them, like, yeah, it's pretty much like that. Not too deep though. I wouldn't tell them like my two secretest things. Not too secretive, like about a girl or something. I mean, that's the deepest. It's not too deep with girls, Nothing deeper than that though. With my best friends, I will tell them my deepest secrets. And what topic do you think they're talking about with their deepest secrets? For all you female or non-gender conforming people, what do you think the deepest secrets are? What? No? What? What? Yeah, but oftentimes in relation to their family. That's the deepest secrets. My mom and my dad, my grandma, right, who's ever in the home, in the adult. Those are the secrets they don't get shared. Those are the deepest secrets. What's happening in my family. Okay. Theme number 2, friendship and mental health. I'll go through this fairly quickly. It's famous last words, Seth. Okay. You need, second theme, friendships and mental health. You need friends to talk to sometimes. Like you have nobody to talk to. You don't have a friend. It's hard. You got to keep things bottled up inside. You might just start crying or whatever. Okay, so the need to talk. Someone to talk to, like you have problems with something, you go talk to him. If you keep it all to yourself, you go crazy, try to take it out on somebody else. I've heard that for decades and decades. Okay, without friends, you'd go crazy, you'd go mad, you'd be lonely all the time, you'd be depressed, you would go wacko. And a 7th grader told me the other day, wacko is seriously outdated. He said, none of us say wacko anymore. He said, take that out. Okay. My friendships are important because you need a friend or else you'd be depressed, you won't be happy, you'd try to kill yourself because then you'd be all alone and no one to talk to. And if you've ever looked at the manifestos of mass shooters, that is directly out of the manifestos of mass shooters. Okay, I'm not doing a pity party for the mass shooters. I'm saying they are telling us directly in their manifestos, right? That they are feeling like you would try to kill yourself and then you'd be all alone and no one to talk to. They feel like they have no one to talk to and no one cares, okay? So, I think I have to move this along a little faster. If you don't have friends, no, you got no one to tell secrets to, so what happens? Then it's like you need to keep all your secrets to yourself. What do you think it'd be like if you didn't have someone? Then it's like I always think bad stuff in my brain because like no one's helping me and I just need to keep all my secrets to myself. Okay, theme 3, we're gonna do this quickly. Do you have this is now they're middle, late adolescents, okay? Now they're getting older, they're a couple years older. The same questions. Tell me about your friendship, that's the question. Okay, do you have any close or best friends? Like my friendship with my best friend is fading, but I'm saying it's still there, but so I mean it's still there because we still do stuff together, but only once in a while. It's sad because he lives only 1 block away from me, and I get to do stuff with him, less than I get to do stuff with people who are way further. I'm like, yo, like a DJ used his crossfader and started fading it slowly and slowly, and now I'm like halfway through a crossfade. I mean, if you thought that adolescents didn't know how to speak, like, oh my God, it's so poetic. Okay, we used to be like close as far as always being around each other. Now it's just we're apart, like as far like if I need them, they'll still be there. If they need me, I'll be there. But as far as like always being together, we're not as close as we were before. I've been hearing that for decades. Okay, we're gonna skip ahead. Okay, actually, do I really want to do this? Yeah, I'll read the first one. Do you have a close or best friend this year? Not really. I think myself, the friend I had, I lost it. That was the only person that I could trust, and we talked about everything. When I was down, he used to help me feel better. The same I did to him, so I feel pretty lonely and sometimes depressed because I think it will never be the same, I think when you have a real friend and you lost it, I don't think you find another one like him. I tried to look for a person, you know, but it's not that easy. And I heard this across race, across class, across ethnicity. I've heard this in China, I've heard this in India, I've heard this all around the world, but I'm still gonna blame it on American culture. And you can ask me about it, but it's definitely American culture. Okay, then the roots of the crisis of connection, 3 quotes just to give you the sense of what I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna call it boy culture, boy in quotations, because it's not a real boy, it's a stereotype of a boy. I don't need to express my feelings. This is when they're 17, 16. I don't need to express my feelings anymore. I am mature, I am a man. So the equation of feelings with being immature, okay? So maturity and manhood are confounded. In a culture that confounds maturity and manhood in a stereotypic way, we're gonna have problems. It might be nice to be a girl because then you wouldn't have to be emotionless. That should give all adults in the room the chills, right? And then no homo, although it's now considered passé, apparently the new homophobic phrase is pause. But anyways, no homo, sorry, I know this, I have insiders. No homo, and me and my friends hang out still, but no homo. Which means basically they didn't say that early adolescence, they say it late adolescence. They equate friendships with sexuality, okay? That's what the culture does. Is same-sex friendships for boys and men are seen as a gay thing rather than just a human thing. Okay, so that's essentially my findings. I talk about a crisis of connection. My newest book breaks it out into, I realize that they're not just telling a story about them, they're telling a story about all of us, right? In the ways we're privileging thinking over feeling, we feminize feeling, masculinize thinking. Thinking and feeling is a human thing, it's not a gendered thing. So when you think, you feel, when you feel, you think. We've split it and put it into a binary and a hierarchy to speak in academic talk, but it's powerful when you think we've done that. I'll repeat it again. We have put thinking as a masculine quality and feeling as a feminine quality when all humans think and feel. Okay, so we got a problem here. Okay, because we've gendered something that is human and a human need and a human capacity. Okay, so it creates a crisis of connection, the culture-nature clash. I can talk about what I mean by that in a second. The consequences is everything you see in this room and everywhere around the world, in my classrooms, definitely at NYU, depression, loneliness, suicide, and violence, okay? And then the solutions is, I'm gonna be really simplistic for a second because we had that gorgeous talk before me. It's listening with curiosity to each other. It's opening up our minds to actually what we can break out of the stereotypes that we hold of each other and hold of ourselves. And that is that's the tool of resistance, is in the curiosity. Okay. I'm not going to talk, wrote a book about it, that's my new book. This is my ultimate cosmopolitan think and do tank called the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity, where it's all about love, but not thin love, but thick love. And then finally, my questions, I'm not going to read them, I think we don't have time and I want to get into a conversation. These were all my questions I came up with listening to all these gorgeous talks today. It made me think about all these questions. And one of them, I guess I want to have you think about, the first one is what is the opposite of tribalism and what is the opposite of cosmopolitanism? Carol Gilligan says the opposite of patriarchy is democracy. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about, if you think about tribalism, what's in your head the opposite of it? Because I think we're misguided here in these conversations around tribalism and cosmopolitanism. Okay, I'm not gonna read it. Do you agree, Seth? Because I think, how much time do we have?
We've got 36 minutes.
Okay, we do. Okay, so we're going to stick to questions from Seth. Thank you to all my students and wonderful people I work with. My books checks out on the front thing, and we are going to now go to Seth's question. Thank you very much, everybody. Should I put this on? Yeah.
Test. Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, hi. Seth Halvorson, thank you. There's a lot to unpack. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about boy culture.
Yeah, so in an individualized culture, which we live in modern culture, where it's all the me, 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 we have a hard time, I have to sit still, it's hard for me to sit still. We have a hard time seeing the waters in which we swim. We have a hard time doing it. And we live in cultural waters. We still think, and psychologists are the worst at it. No offense to all psychologists, but we are the worst at it, in seeing the cultural patterns, and not just culture in terms of chopsticks and forks, but culture in terms of power structure, ideologies, patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, heteronormativity. I could name many, many, many that I call with my students hate ideologies, where some humans are seen as more human than others, and some human qualities, the hard sides of ourselves, are privileged over the soft sides. So that hierarchy of humanness and human qualities is the essence of boy culture, and I say boy culture is in quotations, boy is, because it's a cartoon character of a boy who only has a hard side. And this is the depressing thing, right? That's the model for our entire society in the United States, is to man up, to privilege our hard side, our need for independence, autonomy, stoicism. These are all good things, but at the expense of what we consider the opposite, right? So the idea is to express your hard side to get on top, and we all want to get on top of the hierarchy. So the idea is that boy culture is a culture that privileges the hard over the soft, which creates a clash with our nature, which is naturally hard and soft. We're sensitive, and we can be stoic. We're vulnerable stoic. We want autonomy, and we want connection. We want tribalism, and we want cosmopolitan. We love humans, and we love our group. So we're naturally that. I wear the yin and the yang on my wrist all the time, because to me that's a beautiful symbol of you can't separate them and put them on a hierarchy. And we separate them and put them on a hierarchy. Right, so boy culture is the essence of our culture, and we're not just, boys and men are not just suffering, we're all suffering from it, because it's disconnecting us from what we know about ourselves and what we know about each other. And remember, you can't see somebody else's humanity if you don't see your own humanity. So if we're disconnected from ourselves, we're going to have a hard time seeing other people's humanity, because we're not connected to our own humanity.
So I see the connection then.
Yeah.
Between boy culture and the conference theme.
Yeah.
And one of those central cultural ideals, as you point out in boy culture, is this strong, unencumbered self.
Yeah.
It strikes me as a very powerful fantasy, untethered to the realities of the human condition. And it seems to work out as the psychology of authoritarianism, where strength, not vulnerability, power, not compassion, sits at the core. And as you were talking, I couldn't help but thinking of the silos in which our understandings are sometimes held. And I wanted to hear a bit more of your thoughts about the role of social media and technology in crafting this strong, unencumbered fantasy in boy culture.
Yeah. So we're always treating the symptom as the problem. Technology is a symptom, the way we're using technology, not the problem. So we could be using technology in ways that foster our curiosity, for example. We have a technology that has a like function, right? The like function has destroyed our capacities to connect, because it's about how many likes you get, literally, but also psychologically. How many people like what you do, rather than how likable you are. So the idea is technology is just reinforced, right, a boy culture, that it's about counting how many friends do you have and how many likes do you have. So that's boy culture, right, because it's about numbers over words, quantity over quality. So we have all these, how many friends is enough friends? Like, that's a ridiculous question, right? It's about having a meaningful relationship with anybody is what we're looking for. Anybody. It could be one person. It could be your grandma. And that could be the root of your success in your life, or happiness. So the idea is that the technology and social media reinforces boy culture every day. It's a whole stream of stereotypes shooting at you almost every 2 seconds of the day. And then, right, and then it exacerbates that. However, there's no binary here. Texting can be one of the most intimate, beautiful forms of communication. The amount of texts that my daughter and I do throughout the day, heart, I love you, I miss you, right? She didn't do that 5 years ago, she's 23. But now she does. And I see her do it with her girlfriends and with her guy friends and with her non-gender conforming friends. I see her do that all the time with the texting, the intimacy that happens in texting. To me, that's a gorgeous thing, that you can be reminded that your friend loves you at any minute of the day. So it's not, this is not anti-technology or an anti-social media. It's the way we're It's a bunch of white privileged boys created social media that aren't rooted in their own humanity, so they're not nourishing both sides of our capacity to think and feel. And think about it. We could make a technology. This is what I want to do. I'm trying to do this with TikTok because I have a connection at TikTok. Infuse it as a curiosity platform. I'm going to pitch an idea. Okay, you ready for the idea? You get an owl emoji next to the like emoji, and you hit the owl when you see a post, and you have to ask a question of the person who posted it. Done. Right? And then all of a sudden you're creating a curiosity platform where you're asking another person a question about their posting rather than just saying, I like it or not liking it because you don't like it. Right? You're engaging in questions. So we can change it, and we'll talk a little bit about how we can change it.
Well, a core question of the conference is how persons form attachments, and how we form attachments to others, to the tribe, or to what has been called the cosmopolis. We're hardwired to be social.
Yeah.
But yet partiality enters in. Other sessions today examine the limits of belonging and the place of membership in a group. And your work endeavors to understand the relationship between belonging and human connection, especially as it applies to boys' understandings of friendship. In friendship, the group could just be two.
Yeah.
Friendship is bounded. It is a partial relation, and there are many types of friends. And I'm wondering if you might be able to speak a little bit on the developmental distortions in how boy culture understands friendship, being a friend, making a friend, maintaining friendship, who can be friends, and how can that give us some analytical resources to understand the dynamics of tribalism and cosmopolitanism. I'm not sure if the question is totally clear, but I'm very interested to see how the developmental distortions in boys' understandings of friendship may help us illuminate some of the central concerns of the conference theme.
Yeah. So remember when I started off and I said tribalism, according to boys and young men who I've been listening to, is love of people and a specific group, and Cosmopolitan is just love of humans. You hear that both those loves in their narratives. So when Nick says it's just human nature, that's a love of humans. Because he's saying my love that I feel for this other guy is not just my love. It's actually embedded in my nature. He makes it into nature. And that's a love of humans, to see it as human nature, not just me. So you hear the disruption of what tribalism and cosmopolitanism is. Why is there no love in this conversation, right? I mean, why have we, because we think love is soft and it's not as important as thinking about other things like politics, even though politics is infused with love or not love, right? But the idea is that they underscore that humans are at the level of wanting to be loved and to be loved. And if I learned anything in 40 years of listening to people, is we all want the same thing, which is to love and to be loved. That's it, done. And so if we think about, that's our goals as grown-ups trying to nourish young people, is to make sure that they feel loved and to give love, then everything has to shift. How we do technology, how we teach, how we, et cetera. And not, again, I want to underscore, this is not a let's all hold hands article, right? It's not a weird let's all hold hands.
There's no kumbaya.
Right. This is about saying the way we love each other is recognizing what gets in the way of love. And what gets in the way of love is an ideology. Remember I said that's the boy culture, the hierarchy of humanness and human qualities makes us not love each other. Our culture makes us, clashes with our nature. And if a culture clashes with our nature, we should not be surprised that people are suffering. Because our culture is not nourishing our social nature. It's not nourishing, it's not valuing our skills, our sensitivity skills. How many people who identify, actually I'm going to say everybody, I want you to raise your hand, how many people have been called overly sensitive? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to give you real news, especially for teenagers and young adults. There's no such thing as being overly sensitive. There's no such thing. You're sensitive, you're human, that's what it means to be human. To be sensitive, right? You're sensitive. And your sensitivity, this, all the students in the room, is your superpower. That's what allows you to have close relationships. That's what allows you to take care of another person, to take care of yourself, is your sensitivity. Celebrate your sensitivity. And when someone tells you you're overly sensitive, said, no, I think you're not sensitive enough. Because that's my superpower. So the idea that it's a culture that doesn't value sensitivity. We look at emotional regulation, You know this if you're a teacher. We don't look at emotional sensitivity. Oh my goodness! We try to get you to regulate your emotions. We don't try to get you to be emotionally sensitive to other people's feelings. Like, oh my God.
So we're lacking an emotional vocabulary to describe and help the next generation go through the process.
Absolutely, but I really want to underscore this because it's so obvious. It's so obvious to young people. We're not valuing the very thing that allows us to make the connections to ourselves and other people. We're not valuing them. And so when we ask why we're in so much trouble, which we are, it's because we're not valuing those natural human skills that you see in a 5-year-old. The natural 5-year-old curiosity, the natural 5-year-old sensitivity. Mommy, are you yelling at me because your mommy yelled at you? That's a 5-year-old question. Another 5-year-old question. Mommy, why do you smile when you're feeling sad? Why do you fake an emotion? Those are natural human questions. And that's how we're born. And then we grow up becoming less intelligent because it's a culture that doesn't value our intelligence, right, naturally.
So in a recent paper, you say, situating child development in an ideological context and studying resistance and accommodation raises pivotal questions for the study of development and thriving in this regard. And you posed this terrific question. How do we adjust in a maladjusted society? And it almost was as if you're proposing an answer to the million-dollar question from the last session. You propose a pedagogical intervention to combat dehumanization, boy culture, what you call listening with curiosity.
Yeah.
You say it has many steps. Can you say more about these steps as interventions to combat this pernicious boy culture and responding to the needs of a person in the moment? And I ask that question as the father of a 5-year-old boy and a former boy myself, and probably still. In what ways can we use your framework of listening with curiosity to push back against this force of disconnection and alienation and, an understanding of, an alienated subject?
Okay, so I think I'm going to start from Phil. Phil's not here anymore. So you know how Phil started with he had some cynicism whether we could foster curiosity, and then he sort of switched his view a little bit at the end. He was more optimistic. I want to start from where his second opinion, which I want you to. I'm going to answer this question, I promise. We are born naturally curious. That's a natural human capacity. We see it in 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. We see this natural capacity. Not just intellectual curiosity, interpersonal curiosity, your thoughts and feelings. I have to do a tangent for a second. Do you know in the field of developmental psychology, the study of child development, there is no study of interpersonal curiosity as a topic. We don't study it. We study intellectual curiosity. We don't study children's development of curiosity about your thoughts and feelings. If there's ever evidence of boy culture, that's it, right? We see it as gossip. We think it's as irrelevant. It's not important. It's the way we connect is through that curiosity. You cannot be connected to someone if you're not curious about them. I'm going to say that again because we are so incurious at this point. You cannot connect deeply to someone without being curious about their thoughts and feelings, and not only learning from them, but learning about you from them, right? And beginning to see yourself in them. And once you see, Toni Morrison said this, once you see yourself in them, what happens? What do you think happens to your curiosity, to that line of students in the back? Come on, what happens? When you see yourself in somebody else, what happens to your curiosity? When you see yourself in somebody else, what happens? Yeah, you get more curious naturally. Your 5-year-old curious, you get A+ for that one. Your 5-year-old curiosity comes back in because ultimately, once you see yourself in the other, it makes you curious. What else is similar? Where is it different? Why is it different? Why is it similar? So the key is to listen with curiosity, which is a natural instigator of curiosity, because then curiosity begets more curiosity. And this is the good news. We are naturally curious. So we don't have to teach it. We just have to nourish it. Just continue to nourish it. And if you're parents, I said the only thing you should do with your children is nourish their curiosity, intellectual and interpersonal, and then you're done. Because the idea is that curiosity is the key to health and well-being, right, to connection. The thing we're doing in schools, and you can write me about it, we've been doing something called the Listening Project for 10 years in public schools around actually around the world at this point, and we're starting to do it in all different places. We're making a documentary film. It'll come out in the spring called The Listening Project. We've been teaching 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and high school students a practice. There's 9 practices of listening with curiosity. We've been teaching them. It's around a curriculum. They do radical things with their skills. It's an amazing project. It transforms everybody's lives, including the teachers. And what's so simple to me is all we're doing is teaching the 5-year-old capacity. That's all we're doing. We're bringing back that 5-year-old capacity. I want to do a podcast, if anybody wants to fund me. I want to do a podcast called How to Act Like a 5-Year-Old, right? To basically bring us back to that natural sense of wonder that we were born with about each other, which then can lead to a more cosmopolitanism and also tribalism in a positive sense of a love of certain people.
So, speaking as that 5-year-old boy, and I'm very interested in all the sort of like, the intervening influences that stop that or frustrate that curiosity. And one of the questions that I have about that is that really, aren't there like multiple tribes of boys, or like there's the tribe of toxic patriarchy, which distorts emotional vocabularies, frustrates the ability to empathize or recognize the interdependence of all. And then there's this tribe of boys that you're kind of talking about that's nascent in early stages of development. Do persons start out as cosmopolitans and then end up as tribalists? Yeah. Does one retreat? Does one take over?
Yeah.
Are you at 8 a.m. Partial to your group, and then at 8:30 perhaps able to see the common humanity and the shared horizons?
Yeah. No, at 8:45, not 8:30. Okay, so the argument I am making based on the data, based on listening to young people, is that we are naturally cosmopolitan and naturally tribalists, right? So we naturally love people, our mom, our grandma, our sister, our brother. That's our group, our family. And we are naturally cosmopolitan, which is love of humans, that loving, engaging with humans. The 5-year-old that asks a question to everybody on the plane. That's a love of humans. Why do you do that? Why do you have a mole under your eye? I mean, all those things is actually a curiosity about other humans, which is a kind of love of humans, right? What can I learn from this human? I don't know them. They're sitting next to me. They have a mole under their eye. I want to know why, right? So the idea is that we're naturally that. We grow up in a culture that does a thin cosmopolitan and thin tribalism. So, we do a fake tribalism because it's not real love. It's oftentimes toxic love or thin love of loving your group, but it's premised on hating other people, which I would question is real love. Or it's a cosmopolitan love of all humans, but that's thin because you don't really love all humans. You just mostly love your own group. So the idea is that it's a thin version of it, but we're naturally a thick version of it. So again, the solution, you know where I'm going here. So the solution has to always be, if we're naturally, thick tribalists and thick cosmopolitanists, it's to nurture the thick version of that. What does it mean to love humans? It doesn't just mean that I love you regardless of what you think. It's that actually, I teach in Abu Dhabi, I teach in the Middle East. There's lots of differences of opinion in that classroom. So it's not that the students love each other, because they totally disagree. But they love each other, because they're totally fascinated as a group why you could believe that you need to have your brother with you every time you travel, or your father, and you think that's sexist. And they actually have discussions about their different viewpoints, and they don't end up agreeing, but they end up seeing each other's experiences, and then a kind of love gets created, even in disagreement, even in total disagreement, right? But a sense of love. So, and you can nurture that in the classroom, you can nurture that at home. It's easy to do because it's natural. It's natural to how we come out into the world. Okay.
So we should honor those forces of curiosity.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And we have some time to open up the
curiosity,
floor for
yes, come on.
its exercise.
This person over.
I will say as a moment, just as a sort of matter of the program, we're going to end at 4:45, and there'll be a 15-minute break, which hopefully the conversations will continue throughout the course of the conference. But let's hear some of the curious questions, and maybe someone from the back corner.
And then that person over there too, because
Yeah. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for that. You said kind of offhandedly, something that really interests me was that psychologists are the worst at seeing kind of ingrained cultural hierarchy.
Why?
Well,
that your
okay,
question?
my question is, do you
Yeah.
feel like, I know
Yeah.
you're more on the clinical side than
Yeah.
the
Oh, okay,
therapeutic
okay.
side,
Yeah.
but does that have anything to do with kind of psychology moving away from psychoanalysis and towards kind of like CBT and a more individualized method that kind of believes in an
Totally.
individual ability to overcome social issues in a kind of diagnostic attitude that becomes, I feel like, essentialist, and that's kind of a
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wanted to hear
Yeah.
you expand on why you said that
Yeah.
and your thoughts on kind of discussions around propensity and genealogical and biological propensity
Yeah.
today.
I mean, you actually said it more beautifully than I could have said it. So what you just said is just accurate. So in a culture that doesn't see itself, we get trapped into these delusions that it's all about the individual. And even the way we divide up our fields, sociology versus psychology versus anthropology, which is supposed to be culture. You can't look at psychology without understanding sociology, anthropology, education, politics, economics. I mean, we're people. We have all these different elements, and we've divided up our academic disciplines in these dissociated, segregated fields, and we don't speak to each other. So you end up with a psychology that's all about your psyche. But what is your psyche? What is your psyche? Your psyche is a reflection not only of what you brought into the world naturally. Of course, I believe in natural things. I've been using the word constantly. But it's deeply shaped by your context, including the power structure within your culture. And the fact that psychologists continue, in my field, developmental, continue to define culture as somehow chopsticks and forks, meaning how you eat or what you eat or your belief in the family or not the family, and not actually that you happen to be in your identity on the bottom of the hierarchy of humanness is going to affect your psyche. You get what I'm saying? So you got to look at power structure to understand psychology. And the reason I would say psychology doesn't do that is because it sees itself as psychology, which is supposed to be about the individual. I have the critique of sociology. Where's the individual in sociology? There's no individual in there. I have it true with political science, right? Where's the individual in that? Where's the psyche of the individual embedded in a system where they're on the bottom of the hierarchy and everybody hates them, right? So even a tribalism from someone's on the bottom is different than a tribalism from someone on the top. It's different, right? It's different because it's from a different position of power. So it's a little bit of a ramble onto your answer, but you get what I'm saying. The labeling is definitely, I love therapy. Most of my students are in therapy. My daughter's in therapy. She loves her therapist. It can't just be therapy, though. Or the therapy has to be more inclusive of friends, of family, I mean all those things. And it has to also be in addition to therapy, so that we're seeing the person as a relational being, not just as a, someone who needs help internally, and will get it just through, having good therapists.
Someone else, please. Maybe someone from
Can we get this person? Yeah.
right there
Yeah.
in the front.
Yeah.
Well, you want to borrow mine?
I really liked your talk. It's probably gonna make me cry. When I was a kid, I'm gender non-conforming, but I obviously didn't realize that until I was older. But when I was young, I would observe those kind of deep friendships, and I was angry, that I felt like I could never have those. I think part of that, it seems, is that in order to have deep male friendships or deep female friendships, you have to be perceived as being able to perform femininity or perform masculinity. The issue, of course, is, though, that to perform masculinity, you have to be unemotional and things like that. So how do we deal with that paradox? How can we see each other in others while what we see in each other is our inability to perform emotions and be emotional?
Okay.
That's a marvelous question.
These questions are giving me your question just gave me the chills all the way up from my toes to my head. To do what you just did is the first step. Because you just did a truth-telling thing. And I always nurture in young people, because they're natural truth-tellers. We're natural truth-tellers, but we grow up and we start not telling truths. So you just did a truth-telling thing, which you said exactly what boys and girls and non-gender conforming kids have been telling me forever, right? That the problem is, I'm going to say something that's going to sound controversial. It's not controversial, but it's going to sound it. The problem is not our gender pronoun. The problem is how we've defined our gender pronouns, not our gender pronoun. So people who identify as they, a lot of my students identify as they, my daughter does as well. She's she, they. And that's a beautiful thing to do. It's a beautiful disruptive thing to do in a culture that's all about the gender binary. But we got to go deeper than that. We got to go deeper than that, and that's what you're suggesting. We got to go deeper than that to see that it's actually a dynamic that we still believe that masculine and femininity is gendered, rather than just human qualities that come out in all humans, right? We still believe that thinking and feeling is gendered and sexualized. That should just give you the chills that we still do that. It's not gendered, it's human, and it's at the essence of our humanity. And we have to be able to nurture both sides and value both sides, value the humanities and learning poetry and doing art in college. And we got to get out of this obsession with the STEM fields that it's all about STEM. We got to be all about poetry and, you know, doing beautiful things in our lives, and also loving I have an astrophysics son, loving our astrophysics son too, right? So it's not about flipping the hierarchy. Don't flip the hierarchy. Don't flip the hierarchy. The soft is not on top, right? You got to value equally both. Don't flip the hierarchy. Okay.
Other questions, please. How about from this side of the room?
Sorry, I have already.
Oh, you have one?
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, great.
I got it before, so I just step in, okay?
Thank you.
My name is Veronica. I'm doing my PhD in Germany, and now I'm visiting a scholar at Columbia, and working on Hannah Arendt and her relational concept of personhood. So I really appreciate what you said. So here's my question. Would you say that the basic problem is the degradation of human feelings, or is it not ultimately even the denial that we are relational subjects and social subjects? So I think we should always go beyond what you said. It's not also about the feelings, it's more that we don't understand that we are relational subjects or persons better.
Yeah,
so,
and as my mentor was Carol Gilligan back in the day, in the 80s, and we're born in relationship. I mean, that's what she always starts out with. All her lectures are, we're born in relationship. So if we understand that we're born in relationship, we're born in relationship. And it doesn't mean we don't have a self, because it's not flipping the hierarchy and putting the self on the bottom. It's saying that we're born in a relationship and we grow into wanting our autonomy and our sense of connection. And the two correlate. I'm going to tell you a researchy thing in the attachment field, which all clinicians know. So we don't talk about this enough. Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, both founders of attachment theory, said, in order to have autonomy, you have to be attached, you have to be connected. In order to freely explore the environment, you have to feel connected. And all the clinicians are nodding. And also, in order to feel connected, you have to have autonomy in the relationship. For all you think that you all have to spend all your time with your romantic partner, you need some autonomy there. So go off and do your own thing. Don't always be with your partner, right? Do your own thing. You're autonomous. Have friendships. Have lots of friendships, right? If you're having problems in your relationship, go spend time with your best friend, who's not your romantic partner. So the idea is you need the autonomy to be connected, and you need to be connected to be autonomous. And so we have to stop splitting it, that a relational self means somehow not an autonomous self. No, that's ridiculous. You think and you feel. I mean, neuroscientists talk about that brain damaged patients split thinking and feeling. Healthy, non-brain damaged people, it goes together. Right, so that same with relationships and the self. It's self in relationship, which clinicians always know. There was a lot of questions up here, and I don't know. You do the.
Yeah, I mean, how about over here?
I think there's also one in the back too.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Madeline. I'm from the Dalton School. Thank you for this, first of all. I wanted to go back to something that you said earlier about how even though you hear a lot of the same things coming from boys all over the world,
Yeah.
you'd still pin boy culture, or what I've always known as toxic masculinity, on American culture.
Yeah, good.
Can you talk more about that, please?
Thank you, yeah. So I don't like the phrase toxic masculinity, and I'll tell you why. The problem is not masculinity, right? It's a culture that is premised on valuing the hard sides of ourselves over the soft sides of ourselves. The minute you say it's about masculinity, you're buying into that actually hard is masculine. It ain't masculine. It's human side of ourselves. And there's a lot of the hard sides that are very positive. Stoicism, autonomy, the self, those are all good things. And even aggression, when someone's attacking you, your compulsion, your ability to actually fight back, that's a good thing. Right? So the idea is don't stop masculinizing things that are not masculine. So I don't like toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is sort of the extreme boy culture problem, right? Where it's all hard. So when I say boy culture, I'm saying it's implicating all of us, first of all, not just men. It's implicating all of us. And I'm saying it's the waters in which we swim that we are modeled on a boy that's a cartoon character that only values money over people, right? The hard over the soft. And it's the boy is a reflection of capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity. That's the boy. But I always do this, and it's funny because I've been interviewed by places like CNN, and they always put boy culture in quotations. And I'm like, no. It's the boy. You mean it's not a real boy. Meaning that's like not a boy, it's a boy.
Right, it's not like Steve.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is to see that that boy culture is definitely affecting women. Do you know now we find, I got to do this too much. In China, because we've been doing this 20-year study of 1,200 families in Nanjing, China. My dad lived in China for a long time. We find that the young women in China, in Nanjing, are more likely to adhere to norms of masculinity than the guys, because young women have gotten the message. What's the message for all you young women? What's the message? Yeah, go ahead. Exactly. If you want to get your foot in the door, you got to act more like a stereotypic guy. Right? You got to only believe in hookup sex, right? You got to not need relationships. You got to be mostly friends as women with guys. I mean, all of that, they're adhering to norms of masculinity more than the guys. So, when you make it about masculinity, we think we're talking just about men. But we're talking about all of us. And we all have the natural capacity to disrupt boy culture, which is how you disrupt it is through the tool of curiosity. To see that you are not just a boy, that you are a human with all these complicated sides too. So and why I call it American, oh my goodness. It is so American. And you know how I know how it's so American? Because I've lived all over the world. I was born in Paris. I lived in the Middle East. I've lived in China. I've lived all over the world. And you see the change from the 1980s, I'm also old. The 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And you see the change. In China in 1980, men held hands all the time. All the time on the street, best friends held hands. You saw it everywhere, hugged each other. It was very intimate. In 1980s, I thought they were all gay, right? Because that was my American sensibility. I realized they weren't all gay. Heterosexual was outlawed, but basically they weren't all gay. They weren't gay. 2000s, I moved back to China, Shanghai with my kids. You never saw men holding hands. That had been tuned into gay. Give you another example. In Abu Dhabi, men in a form of intimacy among Muslim men will touch their noses. 10 years ago, I saw that a lot. Men would greet each other by touching each noses. I teach there every year. The last 4 or 5 years, I've never seen it again. I don't see it because it's seen as girly. It's seen as kind of gay to touch your nose to another guy. So that's American masculinity. And finally, Close, you know that movie that was made based on my book? See the movie. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a Belgian movie. And the Belgian filmmaker said, I read Deep Secrets. It's all about American boys. And he said, and I saw myself, and I saw all my male peers in Belgium. And it won 110 awards around the world, right? So it's speaking to people around the world, but it's American, it's the American hyper-masculinity, right? The hyper-hardness. We are such a brutal, hard culture, right? I mean, look at our healthcare system, right? We're a mean, nasty culture. But the good news is that we're naturally actually hard and soft, so we can resist the culture, as one 17-year-old girl from Ethiopia said, we can fight our culture, are you ready? With our nature. She said that. She said, 16 years old, she said, we can fight our culture with our nature.
That's an inspiring point to conclude. We teach a course that's been modeled on your scholarship called The Science of Human Connection here at Bard, and I teach that with a few of my colleagues. And we are so inspired by your visit and the analysis of what's getting in the way of human connection. And I know that this conversation will continue throughout the breaks and tomorrow and so forth, but could you please join me in a warm round of applause and thank you for Dr. Niobe Way.